بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Moving on to the third point, the author says أقسامه بالنسبة إلى عدد طرقه. The types of Khabar al-Ahad, the divisions, the categories of Khabar al-Ahad with regards to its turuq, with regards to the chains of narrations and how many narrators are found in these chains. The adad, the number of these chains, of these isnads. He says يقسم خبر الآحاد بالنسبة إلى عدد طرقه إلى ثلاثة أقسام. Says here خبر الآحاد, that's what it says here in the book. It doesn't say ينقسم. Allahu alam, is that a printing mistake or not? But in the book that I have, it says يقسم, and in most cases it would normally say ينقسم. At the end of the day, the meaning is clear. He says خبر الآحاد is divided into the following categories from the aspect of the angle of its isnad, of its turuq. That's what's meant by the word turuq, the plural of tariq. He says ألف مشهور باء عزيز جيم غريب وسأتكلم على كل منها ببحث مستقل. The author then says these three categories are as it follows. Number one, mashhur. Number two, aziz. Number three, gharib. And we're going to speak about them individually, bidnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have mashhur, we have aziz, and then we have gharib. Three categories, three subdivisions of khabar al-ahad. And these categories or subdivisions are with regards to the number of isnads and the men in these isnads, and not the meaning of the hadith, where it's collected, so on and so forth. In other words, a thing can be broken down into different categories with regards to types, with regards to colors, with regards to levels, with regards to materials, etc., which is common sense. But it's very important for us never ever to lose focus of our common sense when we learn the Islamic sciences, which is a widespread phenomena, a major problem among people today, the teacher and the taught, the caller and the called. Not all of the times, not everyone, but oftentimes with many of us, we become pushed far away from using our basic minds that Allah has blessed us all with, bidnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. And common sense does not go against the scientific knowledge, the actual ilm, the facts that we're learning. Rather, the way of grasping and obtaining these sciences is by using our common sense. Khairan inshallah. So three types. He said mashhur, he said aziz, and he said gharib. Number one, al-mashhur, تعريفه لغة هو اسم مفعول من شهرت الأمر إذا أعلنته وأظهرته وسمي بذلك لظهوره. He says here, the word mashhur linguistically means that which is famous. That which is famous. Coming from three letters, sheen, ha, ra. To make something famous. To announce something. To publicize something. To propagate something. To advertise something. And it became famous and it became well known. He says, باء اصطلاحا هو ما رواه ثلاثة فأكثر في كل طبقة ما لم يبلغ حد التواتر. As far as its meaning in the sciences of hadith, what does it mean according to the ulama of hadith, the muhaddithin? He says, then it is the hadith that is reported by three or more narrators, three or more men in each level. The hadith that is reported by three or more narrators, three or more. It doesn't mean that it's just three. In other words, three is the minimum, no less than three. And there isn't a restriction on how many people can be in the tabaqa, and what we mean by tabaqa, as we've explained before, is the level of the isnad. The Sahaba, those who reported directly from the Prophet ﷺ, or at least from another companion, that's a tabaqa. That's a level, a layer. And then we have those Muslims who came, who believed in Allah and His Messenger, but never met the Messenger of Allah. But they did meet the companions and studied with the companions, sit with the companions, benefit from the companions. They're called a tabi'un. And these tabi'un, they are a tabaqa, a layer. And then we have those who came after them, their students, their disciples, those who didn't meet the Sahaba, never studied with the Sahaba, but they learned from the students of the Sahaba. That's a layer, that's a tabaqa. So he's saying that every tabaqa has to have at least 3 reporters. 3 Sahaba, at least. 3 tabi'in, at least. 3 students of the tabi'in, at least. وهكذا. It can have 5, it can have 7, it can have 10, it can have 12, but no less than 3. And the thing which divides this or separates this from the mutawatir hadith, the author and others, they say, مَا لَمْ يَبْلُغْ حَدَّ التَّوَاتُرِ. Says that which doesn't reach the status and the level, meaning the number of tawatur. So the question must go back to what we originally explained, and the problems that we originally brought up is, what is the level of mutawatir? When does a hadith become mutawatir? According to how many? Or how many narrators? When does it reach the level of تُحِيدُ الْعَادَةُ تُوَاتِئُهُمْ عَلَى الْكَذِبِ? Okay, or يفيد العلم القطعي الضروري يضطر الإنسان إلى تصديقه. When does that happen? To 10 people, to 12 people, to 15 people, to 20 people? Obviously, people differ in their levels and the different reports that they bring you, which make you believe and make you have doubt, let alone to disbelieve or to reject. And there are certain people that if they bring you something, it's automatically something that you accept and you have belief in, you're firm, just because of the quality of the narrator. And there are other people, no matter how many of them are, you won't accept and you won't believe. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah and others, they've made examples of food with regards to when people become full. If someone is stressed out, if someone is sad, if someone is extremely happy, they may not become full as quick or as easily as others. Whereas you have different types of food, such as meat. Eating meat is not like eating salad. Eating bread, wheat bread is not like white bread. Well, heck of that. Rye, grain, and so on and so forth. So it's different factors which lead to a person's belly or a person feeling that his belly is full. So that's an issue in itself. So when does the hadith become mutawatir and leave or graduate from the level of mashhur? Is there a definite number that's scientifically proven? That is a question that needs to be answered. Moving forward. He says, ثانيا مثاله حديث إن الله لا يقبض العلم انتزاعا ينتزعه. He says an example of this, an example of a hadith which is considered to be mashhur, a famous, well-known hadith, is the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ says, Allah will not take away knowledge by snatching it out of the breasts of men. Allah will not take away knowledge by snatching it away or out of the breasts of men. That's not what's going to happen. It's not going to take place. He says this hadith is mashhur. It's reported by at least 3 or more narrators, or by at least 3 narrators in every tabaqa of its isnad, but it is not mutawatir. It's not mutawatir. ثالثا المستفيض لغة اسم فاعل من استفاضة مشتق من فاض الماء وسمي بذلك لانتشاره. He says, then we have another term which is very similar to mashhur, and according to some of the people of knowledge, it's synonymous, and it's called mustafid. Mustafid. He says this word mustafid is derived from fad al-ma, which means water pours forth. Water pours forth. An abundance of water pours forth. In other words, they call a narration mustafid, meaning that it is so widespread, so famous, like water rushing and gushing forth, running forth. Okay? An aqueduct, or whatever the case may be. طيب. He says here اصطلاحا اختلف أو اختلف في تعريفه على ثلاثة أقوال وهي أولا هو مرادف للمشهور ثانيا هو أخص منه لأنه يشترط في المستفيض أن يستوي طرف إسناده ولا يشترط ذلك في المشهور ثالثا هو عم منه أي عكس القول الثاني. He says as far as what is al-mustafid, what does it mean in the sciences of hadith, he tells us that there are three main views and there isn't ijma', there isn't consensus, they do not agree upon it. But he says there are three main views with regards to the definition of this word mustafid. Number one is that's a synonym to mashhur, no difference. Number two is that it is more specific, is a bit more finely tuned than the mashhur. And that is, they say that mustafid must have an equal amount of narrators in both sides, both directions of its isnad. Sahaba and the last tabaqah before it goes viral, quote unquote, to the books of hadith. Okay? And that is not the case with mashhur. And then the third opinion is that it is the exact opposite. Is that the mashhur, the condition of mashhur, is that it must have istiwa' tarafay al-isnad. Both levels, meaning the beginning and end, must have equal amount of narrators that are above three. And that's mashhur and not mustafid. What's important is the term is very extremely scarcely used by the people of hadith. That's first and foremost. Alright, just like we said about mutawatir, scarcely used by Ahl al-Hadith, especially the early Ahl al-Hadith. What's important is this is the word mustafid. You may read in some books of fiqh or some books in usul al-fiqh, okay? Or maybe even in some takhrij books you may hear this word or this term being used. So it's good to know it, but it's not good, it isn't good to spend too much time on this and to get stuck on a term that's barely used, let alone if the term is foreign. Khairan, inshallah, moving forward. The fourth section, the author says, al-mashhuru ghayru al-istilahi. He says the word mashhur, but not mashhur according to the terminology of hadith, the sciences of hadith. In other words, linguistically or customarily, the people consider this to be mashhur. This is famous. This is a well-known report. And it does not mean, it doesn't necessitate that it is authentic, let alone of this level. Clear on this? There are many hadiths, many reports that are world-renowned, well-known, such as paradise is beneath the feet of the mothers, or such as, one may say, an-nadhafatu min al-iman, cleanliness is from faith. Or people say, ad-din al-mu'amala, the religion is how you deal with people and treat people. Or some people, they say, hubb al-watan min al-iman, loving one's nation is from faith. Okay, and many other narrations when it comes to the Sahaba, virtues of Sahaba, attacking vices against some of the Sahaba, and the list goes on, that are totally bogus, but they've become famous and very, very, very popular. Alright? So he says, وَيُقْصَدُ بِهِ مَا اشْتَهَرَ عَلَى الْأَلْسِنَةِ مِنْ غَيْرِ شُرُوطٍ تُعْتَبَرْ فَيَشْمَلْ. He says, what's meant by this is that which has widely mentioned, commonly mentioned upon people's tongues, but it does not fulfill the conditions. He says, shurut tu'tabar. The considered conditions. It's not nothing to do with three or more people in each tabaqah, etc. And it includes the following types. Number one, ما له إسناد واحد, ما له أكثر من إسناد, ما لا يوجد له إسناد أصلا. He says that which has just one chain, that which has more than one chain. It says in that which doesn't have a chain of narration at all. Totally baseless, bogus hadith. It doesn't even exist. Alright, such as the hadith. Another simple example is نحن قوم لا نأكل حتى نجوع ولا نأكل حتى نشبع. Hadith that says we are a people who don't eat unless we're hungry, and when we're hungry we don't become full. That hadith, as the ulama explain, is baseless, has no isnad, has no chain, even if it's popular and famous via the tongues of imams, of khatibs, of scholars, of du'ats, let alone the average layman, the butcher, the Muslim bread baker, the Muslim cake baker. Alright? This is no basis to this hadith, even though it's linguistically or customarily mashhur, it's famous. Moving forward, The fifth section, the author says, أنواع المشهور غير الاصطلاحي له أنواع كثيرة أشهرها مشهور بين أهل الحديث خاصة مثاله حديث أنس أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قنت شهرا بعد الركوع يدعو على نعل والذكوان أو والذكوان. The first example or type is that which is mashhur to the people of hadith. The ulama of hadith consider it to be mashhur, meaning it's a famous, well-known narration to them. The example that the author chooses to mention is the narration of Anas radiallahu anhu, in which the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam made qunut for an entire month. He made qunut for an entire month after the ruku'. When he came out of ruku', he prayed to Allah and he made dua against these different tribes and clans of the Arabs that were oppressive and tyrannical to some of his companions of Ri'l and Dhakwan. Number 2, the author says, مشهور بين أهل الحديث والعلماء والعوام مثاله المسلم من سلم المسلمون من لسانه ويده. Says, that which is well known to the people of hadith, that which is well known to the ulama, that which is well known to the commoners, everybody knows this hadith and it's famous and popular to all of them. And this hadith that states, the Muslim is he from whom the Muslims are safe from his tongue and hand. The Muslim from whom the Muslims are safe from his tongue and his hands. The true Muslim, the real Muslim, the good Muslim is the one that doesn't harm people with his hands and with his tongue. He says, Jim, and it says here in his book, Ha, خطأ مطبعي مشهور بين الفقهاء مثاله حديث أبغض الحلال إلى الله الطلاق. A hadith that states, or he says, the hadith which is well known to the fuqaha, the people of fiqh, the jurists, the doctors of fiqh, the people who deal with the madhabs and the halal and haram, Shafi'i, Hanbali, Maliki, Hanafi, Zahiri, Zaydi, whatever the case may be, the different madhahib of the people. Ahlul fiqh is specifically or especially the 4 orthodox schools. He says here, such as the hadith that states, أبغض الحلال إلى الله الطلاق. The most hated lawful thing to Allah is divorce. The thing that is most beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal, of that which He made halal for His slaves, is talaq. This hadith is famous and popular to Ahlul Hadith. He says Ahlul Fiqh, the people of fiqh. Does it mean it's authentic? It does not mean that. Does it mean it has a chain of narration? It doesn't necessarily mean that. Not to get sidetracked, we know this is a very popular hadith, and there's some of the ulama of hadith who declare it to be authentic, and there are others who say that it is inauthentic. And they say not only is the chain problematic, but before that, the metan is problematic. And how is it possible for Allah Azza wa Jalla to hate something that He made lawful for His slaves? We know Allah does what He wants to do, first and foremost. And law is not restricted by our standards. However, they say it is unbefitting of Allah to make something lawful for His slaves to practice and then hate that thing. And not only hate that thing, but says the most hated. So there are other things which are hated by Allah that are permissible. Many of the ulama, they say that's very extremely problematic, let alone the fact of its technical issues with regards to its isnad. Khairan inshallah, moving forward. The author then says, Del مشهور بين الأصوليين مثاله حديث رفع عن أمة الخطأ والنسيان وما استكره عليه صح ابن حبان والحاكم. That which is well known to the people of usul, Ahlul Usul, the Usuliyin, the scholars that deal with the theoretical basis of fiqh. Where do we get the general principles from? When we have a command, what does that command mean? We have a nahi, a prohibition. What does that mean? What is nasikh and mansukh? What is the actual dalil? Alright? Is what a companion says a dalil or not? Is shar'u min qablana, the previous legislature, a dalil or not, etc. These things that are discussed, that people debate on, they write books on, detailed essays and refutations and scholastic criticism and proving what's right and what's wrong with regards to these theoretical principles. Ahlul Usul. And the different schools of the Usuliyin, The ulama of usul that were Hanafi, that were Shafi'i, that were Hanbali, Imam Shafi'i, what did he do for the usul? Alright, and the list goes on. Ash-Shatibi, the list goes on. He says they have hadiths that they use and they often quote for proofs and evidences or to prove something or to establish a principle of usul. From those hadiths is the hadith that says, my nation is pardoned, my nation will not be held accountable, will not be held responsible for anything that they do, yani that's haram and prohibited, are one of the following types. Number one, al-khata, mistake. That which my nation falls into out of a mistake. It didn't mean to drink this alcoholic beverage. A person didn't mean to expose his awrah. A person didn't mean to break his or her fast. A khata. Or one nisyan. It says forgetfulness. I forgot. I literally forgot about salat. I forgot that I was on my menses, a woman says. I forgot. It actually slipped my mind. He says, وَمَسْتُكْرِهُ عَلَيْهِ, and that which people are forced into. They're coerced, they were compelled, they have no choice. Someone threatened their lives. Someone threatened to do major harm to them and they had no way of standing up and being brave. They are held responsible for those haram acts. This hadith, the author says, has been collected and authenticated by Ibn Hibban and Imam al-Hakim. So this is an example of a hadith which is mashhur, famous, not to Ahl al-Hadith, not to Ahl al-Fiqh, not to the general layman Muslims, he says, but Ahl al-Usul. Moving forward. He says, مشهور بين النحاة مثال حديث نعم العبد صهيب لو لم يخف الله لم يعصه لا أصل له. He says the hadith, which is well known to the scholars of grammar, the nuhat, the grammarians, ulama who specialize in Lugha al-Arabiya. They specialize in the grammar of the Arabic language, not the poetry, not the morphology, not the book, he says, but actual nahw, nuhat. An example of this is the hadith that says, what an excellent slave and servant of Allah was Suhaib. لَوْ لَمْ يَخَفِ اللَّهَ. He says, if he didn't have fear of Allah, لَمْ يَعْصِهِ, he wouldn't disobey him. He wouldn't have disobeyed him. The author says, لَا أَصْلَ لَهُ. He says this hadith has no basis. But at the same time, it's famous and popular among the ulama of Nahu. Moving forward, he says, wow. مشهور بين العامة مثاله حديث العجلة من الشيطان أخرجه الترمذي وحسنه. He says the hadith which is well known, which is famous among the general layman Muslims, the everyday Muslims. And an example of this hadith that states, haste is from Satan. Haste is from Shaitan. He says this hadith is collected by Imam al-Tirmidhi and he declared it to be Hasan. Is the hadith authentic or not? Where can it be found? What's important is that it's well known among the average Muslims. Now, I'm sure when we start talking about Western Muslim communities in the UK, in America, in Canada, Australia, Central America, I'm sure you can find many examples of hadiths that become well known among the reverts, well known among the immigrants, those who came from the sub-Indian continent, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, all right, Sri Lanka, okay, Nepal and Tibet, okay, and other regions of Asia, okay, the Muslims that came from West Africa, the Muslims that come from Gambia and Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, okay, the Muslims that come from Guinea, okay, the Muslims that come from Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. You talk to those different Muslims and different ethnic backgrounds, and if you sat with them, the general Muslims, sit down and drink coffee with them, coffee and donuts, coffee and fritters, tea and fritters, you'll find that they quote all types of hadiths. You may go into a restaurant, somebody who doesn't pray, he has no beard, he's not religious at all. He sees a young religious person come in and he quotes a hadith. You can't pay for the food, or you can't allow your mother to pay for the food, or your mother you can't sit down before her because the hadith, paradise is beneath the feet of mothers. That hadith, he did not study that hadith scientifically. He's quoting a hadith from Jordan, from Tunis. That's hadith as well. That's famous in Tunisia. He came to America, he got a business, he owns a restaurant, and then he quotes the same hadith. So the common Muslim is going to vary. It's relative from person to person. Also, what background they come from, meaning what type of science and knowledge they have. There lies no doubt that, let's just take an example. This just is an example. A Muslim that comes from Saudi Arabia is going to be different. How he thinks, how he sees things is different than a Muslim that comes from, let's say, for example, Morocco. All right, the different madhabs, the schools of thought are different. Saudi and Morocco, the dawah is different. The Islam, how it's practiced, how it's looked at, is different between those two countries. And also the amount of hadiths, which are weak and fabricated, being put into circulation and spread is very different from Saudi Arabia and Tunisia. Very different. So obviously it's going to have an effect upon the common Muslim that comes to America as a businessman, as a student, as a soccer player, or whatever the case may be. Khairan inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Moving forward. The author, he says, حكم المشهور. He says, what is the ruling of a hadith mashhur? What does it give us? What do we benefit from us? المشهور الاصطلاحي وغير الاصطلاحي لا يوصف بكونه صحيحا أو غير صحيح بل منه الصحيح ومنه الحسن والضعيف بل الموضوع لكن إن صح المشهور الاصطلاحي فتكون له ميزة ترجحه على العزيز والغريب. He says the mashhur hadith, which is istilahi, the technical definition, and a definition which isn't technical, he says it doesn't have a description or one set in stone rule. Is it sahih or not? Does it give ilm or not? Yaqeen or not? He says rather it can be authentic and it can be inauthentic. It may be correct and it may be incorrect. He says from the mashhur is that which is sahih. From mashhur is that which is hasan. From mashhur is that which is da'if. And from mashhur is that which is mawdu', spurious, fabricated. That which has no asl whatsoever. He says, however, the benefit, when we say, what's the faida of it then? If it's not all the time authentic, why even study it? And go into these different categories and divisions. He says it does have a miza. It does have a level of distinction. There is a plus. That plus and that level of distinction is that if it is authentic, then it takes a notch above the other types of khabar al-ahad, such as aziz and such as gharib. In other words, when there's a clash, we have two hadiths, and the dilala, what is being said in these hadiths, what fiqh ruling is being explained or sought after from these two hadiths, are seemingly conflicting. It seems as if they clash. And one of these hadiths, saying the hadith that says it's haram to drink with your left hand, is mashhur. And the hadith that says it's permissible to drink with the left hand, this hypothetical example, is gharib. They're both khabar ahad. The author is saying that one has a miza, has a level of distinction. And if there was no way of harmonizing between the two hadiths, and they don't clash, but it means that one is makruh and so on and so forth, and we can't harmonize between the two, he says then we would take, or hypothetically we would take what? The mashhur hadith over the gharib hadith. And that's in general. Moving forward. سابعا, he says seventhly, أشهر المصنفات فيه, the most popular authored books concerning mashhur. المراد بالمصنفات في الأحاديث المشهورة هو الأحاديث المشهورة على الألسنة وليس المشهورة اصطلاحا ومن هذه المصنفات. He says the most important books or the most popular books or the most famous books with regards to hadith mashhur. He says what's meant by the books that talk about hadith mashhura, he says the hadiths that are famous and popular upon the tongues, not necessarily meaning a hadith which are mashhur to the people of hadith. These books are not written to discuss the hadith which are mashhur according to the science, but they are books that are written according to what's popular to the people. In other words, popular hadiths to the fuqaha, popular hadiths to the bread makers, popular hadiths to the glass makers, popular hadiths to the pottery, people who sell pottery in China, popular hadiths to the ulama of tafsir. Anybody that quotes hadiths and becomes famous and popular to them, these books are compiled and classifying and putting these hadiths in one place. Now, before we move forward, this is extremely problematic, and that's because for the sheer fact of, if hadith mashhur is of such a scarce amount, it barely exists, what's the faida of studying it and going into detail and wasting time and energy and effort in something that doesn't really exist? A hadith that has just three people in its chain, three narrators in each tabaqah. If it has 5 or 6 or 7, but no less than 3, what's the faida? One may ask. Or, as we said before, the question we brought about mutawatir. If it's not mutawatir, but it has no less than 3, but any other amount. These are very critical questions that have to be put forth when we talk about mutawatir and ahad. Another very important point is, if there are books written on a topic, but are not speaking on the technical definition, what's the faida as well? If there aren't any books the author is saying, or the most famous books, the most important books, let alone if there aren't any books, as we just said, on the technical definition of mashhur. In other words, anybody can study these books, no matter what his background is. He could be a faqih, and he studies a hadith mashhura. It's very, very important questions that have to be posed and have to be answered. He says, from these books, number 1, Al-Maqasid al-Hasanah fi mashtahara ala al-alsina lis-Sakhawi. He says the first book is that which is called Al-Maqasid al-Hasanah fi mashtahara ala al-alsina. It's a book by al-Sakhawi, okay, from the disciples of Al-Hafidh bin Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala. He wrote a book called Al-Maqasid al-Hasanah, which basically means good intentions. And we know the style of the ulama, when they write books, they play on words. They give a good general meaning, symbolic meaning, along with a rhythmic title. So he says this book is about a hadith mashhura. Number 2, Kashf al-Khafa wa Muzil al-Albas. It says Albas here. في مشتهر من الحديث ألسنة الناس للعجلوني. It doesn't say على ألسنة الناس. Is that a printing mistake? Something missing? That's what seems. This book is by Al-Ijluni, Kashful Khafa, which basically means the unveiling, the removal of ambiguity. Al-Khafa, that which is hidden. Meaning, removing the doubt and the insecurity or the uncertainty about these different narrations and hadiths that are very popular upon the people's tongues, and which many of them are fabricated. Many of them have no basis. Many of them have a basis, but they're weak, etc. Khairin, inshallah, last but not least, he says here, تمييز الطيب من الخبيث فيما يدور على ألسنة الناس من الحديث لابن الديع الشيباني. He says here, the last work is called he says, تمييز الطيب من الخبيث. تمييز الطيب من الخبيث, which basically means distinguishing the tayyib, the good, from the foul, from the wicked, from the nasty, from the dirty. Distinguishing the pure from the impure, with regards to that which is widespread upon the tongues of people, that which many people talk about and say and quote. As we just explained, you're sitting with a Muslim from Turkey in a coffee shop or a restaurant, and he sees that you're a religious Muslim. You're trying to be religious. You're trying to wear hijab and have a beard and have a thobe. You're trying to practice the sunnah. You're trying to look like the Muslims. And the man serves you the tea, and he feels the religious fervor, the current. Or, that's a good thing. You remind him of Allah. Or it may be a thing which it may be a negative thing. He may be jealous. Or he may look down upon you because you're a revert. And I'm from Turkey. Islam has been in my family for years, hundreds of years. Okay, my great-grandfather was a great soldier in the Ottoman Empire. All right? I'm a descendant of this one and that one. Who are you to come and tell me about Islam and to practice Islam? Many people have this attitude. This is a real life statement. This is a real life example. This is real. It's not a fairy tale. It's a reality. You're sitting in a restaurant, minding your own business, and you ask the guy, could you please remove this bottle of alcohol from my table? Or whatever the case may be. Is there a room I can pray? Or the music? Whatever the case may be. Or if you don't say anything, you mind your business. And he says, no, the Prophet said, So and so and so on and so forth. The Prophet said, Siraju ummati Abu Hanifa. The lantern of my ummah is Abu Hanifa. And I'm Hanafi. So we don't believe that this is haram in our madhab. He's like, whoa. I didn't come to the restaurant to debate or to argue. I come to eat a good meal. And he quotes a hadith. Or like I said, he may have a good intention. But the hadith has become popular and famous in Turkey. Popular and famous. And he brings it to America with him. Or popular and famous, as we said, in West Africa, any country. It's not about race. We're making an example of hadiths that are famous and popular which have no basis. Or some of them have a basis, but they're weak and they're incorrect. Khairan, inshallah ta'ala. He says, so this book is called it's called Tamyiz al-Tayyib min al-Khabith. And we see once more the hadith, or the title of the book, it rhymes. And it's also symbolic. Khairan, inshallah. This book is written by an author named Ibn al-Dayy' al-Shaybani. Khairan, inshallah. So that's the end of the chapter of Al-Mashhur. Allah Azza wa Jalla surely knows best.